China is pushing back hard against claims that it is arming Iran, insisting it is acting within the bounds of its own laws and its stated international obligations, even as U.S. intelligence assessments and regional tensions put Beijing under a brighter spotlight. At a routine press conference in Beijing, China's foreign ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun rejected reports suggesting China is supplying or preparing to supply weapons to Iran. He framed the allegations as politically motivated and without evidence, and he insisted China's approach to military exports has not changed. Asked as Guo Jiakun said, China has always adopted a cautious and responsible attitude towards the export of military items, implementing strict controls in accordance with its own export control laws and regulations and its international obligations. He followed that with a blunt dismissal of the claims circulating in Western media and intelligence circles. Asterisk Guo Jiakun said, "We oppose baseless smear, or malicious association." Aston. The denial comes as Washington's attention remains fixed on Iran's rearmament prospects during a fragile pause in fighting. A 2-week ceasefire is in effect with an expiration date of April 22, 2026. And officials and analysts describe the moment as unusually volatile, calm enough for military stockpiles to be rebuilt, but unstable enough that a single shipment, strike, or miscalculation could collapse the truce. In recent days, a CNN report citing people familiar with U.S. intelligence assessments claimed American agencies believe China may be preparing a new weapons transfer to Iran. The report suggested the package could include air defense capabilities and that delivery might happen within weeks. It also alleged efforts to reroute shipments through third countries, potentially to hide the point of origin. Those claims land in a region already straining under the pressure of war, sanctions, and the politics of shipping lanes. One of the core flaws H points is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow maritime corridor that links the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea and carries a major share of global energy flows. When the strait is threatened, the effect is immediate. Shipping rates jump, insurance premiums spike, and oil prices move on headline risk alone. Beijing, for its part, is urging stability and open navigation through Hormuz, while also signaling it will not accept outside interference with its Iran relationship. China's messaging has emphasized 2 points at once. The strait must remain open, and China's commercial interests, including energy purchases, will be protected. In a separate Chinese statement on the waterway, the emphasis was on the strait's role in global trade and energy security and on the need to de-escalate rather than expand the conflict. He said the Strait of Hormuz is an important international trade route for goods and energy, and maintaining its security, stability, and unimpeded flow is in the MON, interests of the international community. China also tied disruptions in maritime navigation to the broader war, arguing that a military solution at sea is not the answer and pressing for calm and restraint. He said the solution to this problem is an immediate ceasefire and cessation of hostilities. All parties should remain calm and exercise restraint. And China is willing to continue to play a positive and constructive role. Adams, that language frames China as a stabilizer, but another layer of China's signaling has been sharper, especially as tensions around Hormuz have risen again. China's defense minister, Admiral Dong Jun, has drawn attention for remarks portraying Chinese maritime movement through Hormuz as steady and undeterred. His comments are being read as a message not only to Iran and Gulf states, but also to Washington and its partners. China intends to remain present in the corridor and to keep its trade routes open. In public comments, Dong described Hina as closely monitoring the Middle East situation with specific focus on the Hormuz passage. The subtext was unmistakable. This is not a distant regional dispute for Beijing, but a direct test of its energy security and commercial access. Dong stressed that Chinese commercial and naval traffic continues to pass through the strait. The point was to project continuity, that China's supply lines remain intact despite threats, military posturing, and increasing uncertainty. He also referenced China's longstanding trade and energy arrangements with Iran, arguing that Beijing will continue to honor those commitments. And he warned other countries against intervening in China's external relationships, a phrase often used by Beijing when responding to sanctions pressure, diplomatic campaigns, or U.S.-led coalition building. The strategic meaning is clear. China is insisting it can conduct normal trade with Iran while simultaneously calling for stability in a waterway that is angrily being treated as a bargaining chip. That balancing act is complicated by a rapid escalation on the U.S. side. President Donald Trump has moved from threats to action, with U.S. steps described as a blockade focused on Iranian ports rather than a full closure of the entire strait, but still a major escalation that affects how companies, insurers, and governments calculate risk. Trump has publicly threatened to cut off Iran's ability to benefit from oil sales, and he has tied maritime pressure directly to negotiations. U.S. Iran ceasefire talks over the weekend did not produce an agreement beyond the current pause, and the failure of those discussions has widened the gap between what the truce promises on paper and what actually happens in contested waters. The immediate consequence has been more military pressure layered onto an already fragile ceasefire. Even if commercial ships can technically pass, the perception of danger can thin traffic to a fraction of normal levels. Shipping the fear of a single incident is often enough to change behavior for weeks. Against this backdrop, U.S. officials are voicing a different concern that Iran could use the ceasefire to rebuild key air defense and other capabilities with outside help. That's where the intelligence claims about China become important. If Iran is replenishing, then every suspected shipment becomes a strategic question. What is being moved, how quickly, and what will it mean if fighting resumes? The CNN report suggested U.S. intelligence believes China is preparing to transfer air defense systems. The sources cited in that reporting said the systems could include man-portable air defense systems, shoulder-fired missiles, commonly known as MANPADS. These weapons are not the kind of strategic system that changes a war overnight, but they can impose real cost by threatening low-flying aircraft, helicopters, drones, and certain mission profiles near the front. That concern is amplified, by the way. Shoulder-fired missiles can be used. They are mobile, relatively easy to conceal, and can be distributed widely. Even a limited number can force changes in air tactics, push aircraft to fly higher, or require heavier escort and electronic countermeasures, all of which can slow operations and raise the risk of losses. The report also claimed there were indications shipments could be routed through third countries to obscure their origin. In sanctions-heavy environments, that kind of routing is frequently alleged, sometimes accurately, sometimes not. And it is one reason intelligence disputes can be so difficult to resolve publicly. Governments rarely reveal full sourcing, while denials often hinge on the absence of proven evidence in the public domain. China's response, however, has been categorical. It has rejected the idea that it is supplying or preparing to supply weapons to Iran, and it has framed the reporting as an attempt to smear Beijing by association with the conflict. At the same time, the maritime dimension is becoming an arena of strategic theater. China's message is that its ships are transiting, its trade continues, and it expects the corridor to remain open. The U.S. message is that it will squeeze Iran economically and militarily at sea if negotiations fail. Iran's message, implicit and sometimes explicit, is that it can raise costs in the strait and that outside pressure will not be cost-free. All of this is happening while the ceasefire clock ticks down toward April 22nd. The wider regional context matters because the strait is not just a shipping lane, it is leverage. Iran's geography gives it a degree of control over the coastal approaches. The U.S. Navy's presence provides a counterweight, but not a guarantee of normal commerce if insurers and shipowners decide the risk is too high. Gulf states depend on the corridor for exports. Asian economies, including China's, depend on it for energy imports, and global oil markets treat any disruption as an immediate shock. In that environment, statements are not just statements. When Beijing says it wants unimpeded navigation, it is also defending the principle that no single power should decide who can trade. When Washington talks about blockading Iranian ports, it is signaling it is willing to use maritime pressure as a tool of coercion. And when Iran asserts control, it is reminding the world that geography can still trump diplomacy. Another layer of uncertainty is the question of what weapons were used during recent air incidents in the war and whether any of those systems could have been externally sourced. There have been claims and counterclaims about aircraft being downed and about the air defense technologies involved. U.S. comments have suggested at least one aircraft loss may have involved a shoulder-fired missile, while Iran has said it used a new air defense system but has not provided detailed specifications. That ambiguity feeds the intelligence debt. 8. If Iran has already demonstrated effective low-altitude air defense with any system, domestic or foreign, it raises the value of replenishing those capabilities now. If a ceasefire breaks, the first days of renewed conflict would likely feature intensive air operations and air defenses. Even portable ones can complicate those plans. Still, there is an important gap between preparing and delivering and between assessing and proving. Intelligence assessments often describe likelihood and intent, not confirmed shipments. Public-facing reporting tends to compress that nuance into a more dramatic claim, which then triggers official denials, counter-leaks, and a new cycle of escalation. For China, the stakes are both strategic and reputational. Strategically, China does not want a closed or militarized Hormuz that threatens its energy supplies. Reputationally, Beijing does not want to be painted as a direct arms pipeline into a conflict where U.S. forces and allies are involved, especially at a time when China is also presenting itself as a supporter of stability and trade. For For the United States, the stakes are military and diplomatic. If Iran reconstitutes air defenses quickly, U.S. and allied aircraft could face higher risks if the war resumes. If China is assisting Washington, we'll argue it is undermining ceasefire prospects and empowering Iran at a dangerous moment. At the same time, the U.S. has to manage the risk of widening the conflict, including the risk of incidents involving third country vessels in a crowded sea lane. For Iran, any pause in fighting is a chance to restore readiness, rearm what has been depleted, and strengthen deterrence. But it is also a period when any suspected shipment could become a trigger event, intercepted, sanctioned, or even struck, depending on how the blockade and enforcement posture evolves. The result is a tense equilibrium, a ceasefire that offers breathing room, but also creates a race between diplomacy and preparation. China's official line remains that it is not doing what it is accused of doing, that it controls military exports strictly, and that it rejects what it calls smear narratives. The U.S. intelligence narrative remains that shipments may be in motion, potentially through indirect routes, and that the systems could threaten U.S. aircraft if fighting resumes. The maritime reality remains that the Strait of Hormuz is the world's most sensitive choke point at the moment, and the one where every major actor has something to lose. What happens next will likely turn on three questions: whether the ceasefire holds through April 22nd, whether maritime pressure tightens or is eased, and whether any concrete evidence of weapons transfers emerges, or whether the story remains a clash of claims, denials, and strategic signaling, with the world's energy artery caught in the middle.